Hello, assalamu alaikum, sat sri akal, namaste. My name is Farheen Khan, and you're watching the AZEEZA show. We took a bit of a break, but here we are again, and very excited to be back. Today's topic, actually, the discussion is about education, engagement within the school systems. There's been a lot of discussion about how parents can be more engaged. How can we ensure that our children are still able to maintain our values, but at the same time engage in school in a very meaningful way. So with me today, we have our guests, Hania Sheikh and Gulsum Anwar. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Wonderful. So why don't we start with you both telling us a little bit about yourselves, your backgrounds, and and then we'll jump right into the topic.
I'm a lawyer by profession, but more importantly, I'm a parent of 4 children, and that sort of sparked my interest in parent engagement and being part of the school systems. So I've been on our school councils for about 7 years within my children's school, and later have become the Ward 12 representative for the Parent Involvement Advisory Committee for the Toronto District School Board. And from there, I'm currently one of the co-chairs of the Islamic Heritage Month Committee, which my friend Gulsum is also a part of.
Yes, I'm a high school English teacher with the Toronto District School Board, so I'm part of this committee, but I'm also an educator with the board, and I've been with them for about between 13 to 15 years. I don't know, there's a few mat leaves in there, but I'm also a parent with 2 children who attend school within the TDSB.
For sure.
So 2 perspectives.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, and this is what it's all about. We really want to talk about. So let's jump right into it. So what type of, how do parents become more engaged in the school system?
Great question. There's a lot of different ways. You can start from volunteering to go on school trips, coming out to school council meetings, showing up to meet the teacher opportunities that come at least twice throughout the year. But if you really want to get a little bit more engaged, besides those types of activities, you can sort of step that up and do some volunteering, be it at school barbecue events or parent engagement events, and sort of more importantly is the school councils. And they're a wonderful sort of vehicle for parent engagement and for creating a really great bond between yourself and the school administration. Typically, come September, I know there's a lot of craziness for teachers and parents, but you'll see a form that calls for self-nominations to be part of school council. And I really encourage people to fill that out and to get involved in school council. And what happens is there's typically about anywhere between 6 to 10 meetings a year. There's an executive that's elected from that, and it's a great opportunity to raise issues that are important to you, that you can sort of discuss with other parents, and also create an event calendar of wonderful engagement events throughout the year. And if you're so inclined, it's a wonderful opportunity to help fundraise and provide additional resources to your school, and a great way to give back. And I think one thing that's important for parents to know is at those meetings that you have every month, your principal and vice principal are typically there. So it's a wonderful opportunity to have an audience with with the administration. And if you're lucky, there are teachers that are also part of council, or who come to present on different topics. So it's a wonderful way to kind of engage with our teachers as well. But in addition to that, it's a nice opportunity to be involved, to know what's happening on the ground, and to help even structure funding and find out what your school needs and how you can support that.
Right. So, Gulsum, you're a teacher. I mean, I love that Hania, you're part of sort of the parent side of things. You're also a parent, but you're a teacher as well. So, tell us from a teacher's perspective, what is it like, when you see parents that are engaged, and how is that important? Why is it important?
Well, I think parents often really underestimate how much power they have. Their voices are actually really significant. Teachers take them seriously. I certainly do. There's a fall off of parent engagement definitely in the secondary school, but we have school councils too, and they're always sparsely populated. So I would encourage parents to come to those meetings because you do have quite a lot of power, and that's more structural, where you're in touch with school leaders like the principal. But even with your child's subject teachers, making that connection with them it resonates with the teacher. That's something they know there's a parent involved. All the research shows that engaged parents contribute to student achievement. So, you know, sometimes there's a feeling that we, you know, as parents, we step back and allow the institution to do its thing.
Right.
But I would really encourage parents to be connected with their teachers or their school councils, and it reaps dividends for the student.
And if I may, actually, Kulsum touched on a really important point, and that was student achievement. And what people don't realize is there's studies that indicate that parents who are more engaged, and it can be from a spectrum of just diligently attending your parent-teacher conferences to being part of student council. Kids statistically come with higher grades than their counterparts. They have greater social behavioral issues, and they've done very well in that respect. In addition, they're also more likely to reach higher education post-secondary.
Right.
So when she says there's a great correlation between engaged parents and student achievement, there's a lot of evidence that supports that.
For sure. I mean, it definitely makes sense that, you know, parents should be more involved. One of the things I wanted to ask both of you is about this Islamic Heritage Month or committee. So, you know, what is that? Why don't you tell us about that? And how is it that, you know, that's influencing sort of the work you do in the schools?
Okay, I can start off.
You start off because you are one of the founders.
Yeah. So I guess where it sort of came from, and I can just speak from a personal perspective. It's like, you know, my kids sort of heard Islamophobic random slurs on the playground, and it was just kind of, as Kulsum sort of said, you know, trying to work with my school and then kind of escalating it to sort of see what can we do to prevent this sort of thing, but forget from a micro level, from a macro level. And the concern for me and my husband was sort of were, okay, fine, you know, we're sort of, you know, we have a voice and you know, we use it, but how about for those who are newcomers or parents who are, you know, a bit more timid or who are sort of quieter, or the kids who don't even tell their parents. So we need to sort of think on a larger level to help create sort of a cultural sharing and really bust stereotypes and myths. So essentially we just sort of took an opportunity of, hey, there's a Islamic Heritage Month which is already established by our province in 2016 and with the Toronto District School Board also in 2016. But more importantly, it's this whole sort of discussion started in 2007 with the federal government, which was Islamic History Month. So we've got this vehicle that already exists. Let's create something around it to use it as an opportunity to share our culture with others and really, and I think part of the aims and objectives is a lot of these sort of racial slurs or issues come from a place of ignorance. And if we can educate and shine a light and help engage people, maybe we can sort of stamp out that ignorance and make life healthier for our children as well as others. So this sort of whole, I guess, month kind of came to be where we created a wonderful resource guidebook, and Kulsum's one of the editors and has done an incredible job. And why don't you continue?
Yeah, I think there's a number of heritage months that are honored, you know, by the government, but also the school boards, and they all promote cross-cultural understanding and respect for cultures and faiths. And but in terms of making sure that they're resonant and the message gets out there, it takes work and it takes participation. So I have to commend Hanya and the other parent, Nazra Sheikh and Kasser Ahmed, who's actually a teacher as well as a parent, for putting in the work to hold events and get that all-important attention. That's required, because intentions are good, but practice is what makes things reality. The other thing is teachers are really well-intentioned and want to honor these things, but they're overwhelmed by the demands of multiple months and their own curriculum objectives. So I really love the resource because it provides support to teachers with activities and information to help engage their students in this month. So in an easy, ready to use kind of way. So it's been great.
And it's created by teachers and parents for teachers.
And what type of a success, what kind of impact have you seen from this so far?
Well, it launched this year, and I thought the events were very well attended. There was lots of turnout.
Give us an example of like what kind of events you had.
Do you want to talk about the launch, or?
Well, no, we had a launch to kind of engage our the TDSB as well as the community our community leaders, as well as parents and teachers. But I think we brought a whole host of activities in terms of like a film night with Sultan the Saint, which kind of talked about Muslim-Christian friendship in a very turbulent time, which was kind of relevant to, it's always relevant, I think, for all religious groups. We did art sessions with the Aga Khan Museum, and other kind of sort of a speaker series, and he had NCCM come in and talk about a lot of issues relating to stereotypes and myths. So it was quite a power-packed show, and it was on the backs of many people who really worked on this.
We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back. All right, right after this. Hello, welcome back to the AZEEZA show. I'm here with Hania Sheikh and Gulsum Anwar to speak about the issue of education and the engagement of parents. So we were just talking before the break about the Islamic Heritage Month and how you've been doing some work in the school system around that. So let's talk about, so you did some events, you have a booklet you've been providing to the teachers so that they can also do some activities and do some education in the school with the students. What else, what type of, you mentioned, Hania, there were some like slurs and things that children were hearing in the playgrounds. What are the kinds of things that parents should be aware of, or should be looking out for when their kids are in school?
I guess from a parent perspective, I think it's having a conversation about just their day and allowing them to to let you know, and as a parent to draw that knowledge and information out as best you can. But I think if they're hearing like slurs relating to like stereotypes with respect to Muslims, and it's happening more than once, I really do think there's value, and again, it's not even just for your specific child, but it's helping those around you to have a conversation and let the teacher know. And I think as from a parent's perspective, I think that's when it's something kind of serious to that point, because it can affect a child's mental health and well-being from my perspective. But I think it's our duty to inform our teachers, inform our principals, and I think you can take it from there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as a teacher, if that's happening in your classroom, there's a responsibility to engage, not only deal with the issue, the specific issue, but to make sure there's kind of a critical engagement in the classroom about, where do these stereotypes come from, what is acceptable, what is not acceptable, and I think teachers have to be committed to this work. We're supposed to be. We have an equity statement in the TDSB that, that asks that we honor differences, and that we're promoting respect between people of different ethnicities and faiths, etc. So parents shouldn't feel alone in this struggle if their kids are facing that. And it does vary school to school. Some schools are there's large Muslim populations, so there might not be much of this kind of negative interaction, or there might be, right? You never know. So again, it's having those conversations and making sure that kids have a place to be heard, but then the parent does as well. The parent,
And do you find that there's been like children that have disclosed to you directly as a teacher in terms of some of the issues that they're facing at schools? I mean, you work in secondary.
Yeah, I work in secondary, but I also work in a school with a large Muslim population and extremely multicultural school. And I think when you grow up in that milieu, like there's less of that, right? But then on the other hand, teachers don't always see everything, right? So I haven't had personal incidents about that, but
well, actually, there's one of the things that I remember a couple months ago. I was invited to a school in Markham, and the school was actually had an influx of Muslim students coming in from the Islamic Foundation. So there was this sort of culture shock that was happening at the school, because it was a public school, but it was it was a Catholic school, and so these, you know, very, I would say, you know, not conservative, but just very cultured sort of students were coming into this new space, right? And how did they start to learn to interact with one another? So they had a lot of really interesting questions. The teachers had a lot of questions as well, right? That were very interesting, because it was like, you know, they weren't trying to be ignorant, they were actually just asking questions, you know, and really trying to understand better, like how to support their students.
They need that. They need your guide.
Primer.
Primer.
That would be great, actually. We should definitely
actually in that resource guidebook that Gulsum and I were speaking of, there is a wonderfully written educator's primer, and that primer is not designed for children. It's just designed, I think, by teachers, for teachers, dealing with a lot of questions that they've been asked over the years, and helping them with that.
Yeah, and a lot of questions were very simple, and it it really was about ignorance, right? Like we even did like a one of the kids, the Muslim Student Association, who had recently sort of started in that school, was like, they were the ones who reached out, because they felt that they needed to have a conversation and try to get their you know, teachers and their students and their colleagues, sort of, you know, their classmates on board, right? And so we did a whole hijab tutorial, and they were like, okay, this is how you wear it, this is what it is, this is why it's important, right? Like they were doing all of that, and then I kind of came in and talked about, you know, Islamophobia and sort of the impact of that and how, you know, it affects people. But it was interesting to kind of see that.
Wow.
Yeah.
That would be.
Yeah. So I want to switch gears just a little bit, and I think that one of the conversations that has also been on a lot of people's minds, particularly parents, and I would say some teachers as well, has been just about, you know, this whole notion of values, right? How do you, you know, maintain people's religious values and at the same time engage fully in society and in school in particular? We've been seeing, you know, lots of parents pulling their kids out of school, you know, doing homeschooling or going into private schooling. So, you know, maybe we can talk about the value of public schooling, right? And why is it important, and why should parents sort of, you know, keep that option open for their kids?
Well, I mean, I'm a public school teacher, so I have to be a proponent of public education.
For sure.
You know, not only as a professional, but for my children as well, and I have children in the same board I work for. I think ultimately, you know, I respect everyone's choices to homeschool or to school separately in faith-based institutions, but my personal take on it is that our children are going to live in a pluralistic society. It's one we've chosen, and I think schooling, sending them to school in a microcosm of the society they're going to eventually enter, is the best preparation for that. You know, our system is secular. So its values are really the values of this country, right? So, and the rights and freedoms that this country protects underpin the school system as well. And a lot of that is about equity. So the TDSB and other boards are making efforts to accommodate and respect, you know, religious practice. That doesn't mean they're allowing space for that. At the same time, they're not, you know, they're not teaching religion, of course. But that equity-minded kind of outlook supports not only our community, but other minority communities, whether they're faith-based or you know, ethnic communities, or you know, some of the LGBTQ community. That same equity outlook supports them, supports us. So we have to keep that in mind when we're, you know, when we're considering the values of the education system.
Do you want to add anything?
No, I think Gulsum did a bang-up job on that one. Yeah, I would agree with her comments.
Oh, that's great. Sorry. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Gulsum, in terms of, like, you know, just the fact that there are other ways as well for parents to continue to sort of educate their children outside of the public school system when it comes to, you know, cultural and religious values, whether it's, you know, for some communities it's like, you know, going to traditional dancing classes and stuff like that, and others it's more, you know, religious texts and how to, you know, learn reading Arabic, for example, with the Quran and stuff like that. I think it's also important, you know, having grown up in this, I think for me it was quite a transition over time when I, you know, got into social justice work and started to realize that, you know, if we don't stand up for, like, we can't expect others to stand up for our rights if we don't also stand up for others, right? And the whole, you know, importance of allyship, really, you know, and really recognizing that at the end of the day, we're all human beings, you know, and we need to humanize one another. So, so that's really important, yeah.
I'd agree.
So here's a question, you know, in terms of the school system with like recent, you know, changes that are happening, you know, how do you balance sort of, I guess, how do you, as a parent, how do you, you know, we've talked now about sort of, you know, how they can be engaged in the school system. I'm sure a lot of parents have struggled with just trying to keep up with like, you know, children's academics, let alone trying to be involved in, you know, into the school and the community and all of these things. How do you as parents like balance all of that?
You know, I think we're both moms, so you magically make everything work. That's all I have to say. And you know what? And I work full time too, like Kulsum. And it surprises you how much you can accomplish. And the nice thing I will say about like with volunteering at your school, there's something for everyone. If you just have time available for during the day, then great. Maybe helping to oversee pizza lunches and during the day engagement activities like that is your thing. And for those who work during the day, you can attend those monthly meetings in the evening and kind of have those offline emails that sort of go back and forth and create different events and all that sort of stuff on your personal time. So I don't know, I feel like there is something for everyone. You just have to sort of figure out what your interest is and what time of day works for you, and I think you can really make it work.
Okay, great. And you personally feel like, you know, fulfilled that you're doing this?
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, it's like I said, 7 years on school council, and I was chair for 2 years, and that inspired me to kind of just, you know, work even closer with the TDSB and work with all of our amazing folks for Islamic Heritage. So it's been a great path for me, and it's really fulfilled me in the sense just to see new computers coming into our school and our new, well, not really teaching supplies, but other things that enhance, because there's reasons around that. Right. But all these wonderful things that enhance my kids' education and bringing in chess and wonderful activities like that, that makes me happy as a mom.
That's great. How do you feel, Kulsum?
I have to admit that I'm not on my school council.
What is it? The shoemaker's
yeah,
it's fair.
Yeah. But I feel privileged because I have so much knowledge of the system. So I take a little bit of a step back and trust what's happening in the school. We have a very active parent council that does a lot of fundraising and events. I try to attend everything that I can. And I think parents, yeah, it is a struggle to balance with work and responsibilities and multiple children. I have to tip my hat to Hanya. But I guess the message I would say is, you know, you don't have to do all of the things all of the time. Your involvement can ebb and flow as long as there's some involvement where you're present in the school and you're aware of the kinds of things that are offered there and things that are available to your child, and that you know your kid's teacher is very important. Very important. You're really, it's sometimes the dividends might not be fundraising per se, depends on your community, but you really view it as an investment in your child. You know.
I actually want to just switch topic just a little bit in terms of children and parents and just accessing. I know, you know, one of the conversations I've had with some of my other teacher friends as well is just about, you know, this whole duty to report, right, in terms of teachers. So, you know, at what point do, you know, teachers sort of identify violence, and how do you sort of report that, and when? I think that there's always that fear, right? Like that your child will be taken away from you, but like at what point do, you know, parents have that or teachers have that responsibility to talk about it? Particularly with women, I think it's very difficult when women want to, you know, are experiencing violence. And coming from that sector, it's something that's always on my mind. And you know, just wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, one thing I will say, and you touched on an interesting topic. I've read stats that 25% of girls will be sexually assaulted at one point during school, like, you know, from K to 12, and that's an alarming statistic. And I think one thing as parents we need to know that there are positive obligations on our admin in terms of there's legislation that called Keeping Your Kids Safe at School Act, and perhaps Kulsum can talk more about the policies that are from that, but it's an obligation for for teachers to report and for principals to take action and so on.
Yeah, I mean, there's been some changes to that where previously the teacher just had to, if a student disclosed that there was you know, violence of any kind in the home towards them or to a parent in the home.
Right.
You know, it used to be that we would tell our administrator, etc. But in light of sometimes that information is lost and the person who's reported it, nothing happens. So we now have a legal duty to report that is very stringent. So any disclosure of violence in the home, we have to call Children's Aid ourselves.
Yes.
And I have done that for the first time, and it's not an easy thing to do.
No, of course.
Situation, I don't want to speak about its specifics, but basically you have to do it. I will say that children were not removed from the home. Children's Aid has evolved in its approach to problem solving as well.
Which is good.
You know, there was a time, I think, where the first impulse was to apprehend, to just remove children from the situation. I think now they ask a lot of questions and they have a lot of conversations before they to ensure the children are safe in the home, but that's not immediately, you know, what happens. But yeah.
Well, thank you so much. We've unfortunately run out of time. I just want to thank you both for being on the show and for having this really important discussion. And you know, to our audience, I mean, definitely as parents, please consider being more engaged in your schools and you know, supporting your children through the process. Until next week, take care.